Thank you for joining us for this week's message at Crosswind Church. If you have any questions about this message or about Crosswind Church, please visit us at www.crosswindchurch.net, or you can email us at info@crosswindchurch.net.
Well, good morning, Crosswind. My name is Ross Barnes, and we're glad to be sitting here. I'm not the lead pastor here. If you were visiting today, I'm an owner here and happen to be the area director of Young Life in the area, and really glad to be sitting here. It's our lead pastor Jeremy's last week of a sabbatical that he's taken, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm really, really excited about his return. I know some of you, beneath the shirt you're wearing, have an I Heart Jeremy Powell shirt, and you were eager for his return, and that's how I am, and I'm sure none of you are as eager for his return as I am right now sitting here, trust me. But I'm really glad, all the same, to be here with you guys. We're in a series called Starting Point. If you've been coming, you know this, and so today we're going to dive into that. The whole premise, I guess, of the series is that everything has a starting point. Life has a starting point, and faith is no different. Our faith, has a starting point, and whether you are, as an adult or just in older years, wrestling with faith matters and kind of trying to figure this out for the first time yourself, or maybe you've been brought up in the faith and you heard truths as a young kid, just like we do back there in Crosswind Kids. And you come to later years, and those truths like God's always present, He answers prayer, and all these things that are so true, that life hits, and we begin to wrestle. We begin to wrestle with, okay, are these things really true? Because my experiences don't always line up with those truths, right? And so we're wrestling. And so wherever you are in the scope of that, you've been following Jesus for as long as you can remember. For all of us, going back to the starting point of faith and going to these roots, so to speak, these pillars that we kind of build our faith on, it's important for all of us. And so that's kind of the idea of this series. And today, we're going to be talking about rules. Now, I don't know what your initial response is to rules, but I'm not always the most in favor when it comes to rules. My wife is a rule follower. I don't know if you're, some of you are probably like this. Like, you stand by the rules no matter what they are, even if you disagree with them, they're just the rules. And we're going to go by the rules. And then there's people like me. I would kind of refer to myself as more of a rule bender. I respect the rules. I just don't always follow the rules. And then there's you rule breakers out there that you're like, that's the rule. Okay, I'm doing something entirely different because that's the rule. Any rule breakers in the house? Let's be honest. Oh yeah, there you go. Tell me in the back. I appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. You're keeping this thing exciting. I like that. But hey, wherever you are in the scope of rules and your natural bend or response to that, there's this question, and the question is this: how do God and rules kind of go together? Because rules and relationships can kind of get sticky. And to demonstrate this, we've come up with some models. You may have better models than we do, but we've just kind of come up with some ideas and thoughts to paint this picture. And so the first model is this: it's a family model for the role between rules and relationship. And its relationship precedes the rules. So when you came into being on this earth, you were born, breathe your first breath, you were born into a family. And, healthy, unhealthy, whatever it was like, there's rules that come into being a part of a family because you are a part of the family. How many times have you said or heard from your parents, as long as you're under my roof, as long as you're under my roof, this is how it goes. And you grow up, you leave the roof, so to speak, you leave the nest, and the rules don't apply like they once did. But as long as you're in this family, under my roof, these are the rules. And you don't go applying those rules to people who aren't in your family. You may have neighbors whose kid you'd really like to put some sort of restrictions on, like, as long as I live here, you can't come out of the house, okay? You just don't call up another person's kid and go, hey, have you done your homework? You got to be home at 10:30, okay? We don't do that. It's a family model, and it's for those in the family. Okay, that's how rules and relationship exists in that model. And then we've got another one, and that model is called the club model. And the club model is this, that the rules precede the relationship. So this is kind of like your job. These are the standards. This is what we go by. This is what we're after. And you're going to sign a contract to commit to these things. And if you fulfill that, you're in and we like you. But if you don't fulfill that, you're out, right? You're out of here. Because we need somebody to meet these requirements. And then lastly, to kind of paint a picture or standard, this is where it gets complicated, okay? The neighborhood association model. Okay, you're in, you bought the house, we can't really keep you from buying the house, and you're here, and we can't really do anything about it, but if we don't like you or you're not really meeting our standard, then we can get kind of mean, and we can make your life miserable, and write you nasty notes, and be real passive-aggressive, and just kind of communicate with you, hey, that dog that's always barking, or that pool that you put right in the middle of your front yard, or whatever you did that stirred everybody up, that kind of creates attention, but you're in, and we can't really kick you out. We can just make you wish you lived somewhere else, right? So that's kind of the neighborhood association model. So we have these pictures of how rules and relationship kind of work, and then we go, okay, how does it work with God? How does it work with God? Because if God is all-powerful, and we talk about Him being all loving, present, just, how does this work with the God of the Bible? Because we have all kinds of pictures in the world around us. And we can come to all kinds of conclusions about what God is like. Maybe you were taught a family model as it relates to God. You're in, and the rules come as part of the relationship. And even if you were taught that model, it's often really, it's much easier to operate as if the club model is the real thing. Like God, I'm trying to live and please Him, and it just kind of, sometimes I'm always wondering, am I really in? Am I really safe with Him? Or maybe you were taught more of a club model, and you spend your life wondering, am I really in with God or not? And then there's the whole, it's complicated. Like, how in the world am I even supposed to know if I'm in or if I'm out or what this looks like? And how does, relationship with God and all this coincide? And so here's the thing. Whether at the conscience level or, sitting here or whatever, all of us in some way, some form are going to wrestle with this, of how the rules connect relationship with God. And so, in order to talk about this, we're going to turn to probably the most ancient text we possibly could to talk about God's heart in this for you and for me. And it's in Exodus 20, and it's actually where Israel receives their first set of laws, the Ten Commandments. We've all heard about this in some way, shape, or form. But there's something here for us to grab a hold of today. So I hope you'll lean in. But before we do that, we've got to have some context of what's really going on. Last week we talked about Abraham, and Abraham receives a promise that he and Sarah are going to have a son, okay? And that their descendants are going to outnumber the stars of the sky. Right? And Abraham and Sarah, they're kind of like chuckling themselves like, okay, we're going to believe you, but it's kind of where they're at. We're going to believe you, but I'm really old. And Sarah's really old, and she's been barren her whole life. She's been barren her whole life. And even the mention of this in some ways is probably a little bit of a shot to the heart. Like, really, God? Really? Really? Us? Now? This? Like, the whole thought is just unfathomable and humorous. And so they go on, time kind of goes on, and they're doubting more and more and more as time goes on. And so Abraham gets word from his wife, like, hey, I'm kind of wondering if this is really supposed to happen with me. I've got this handmaid, she's young, she could probably have a kid. Maybe we're supposed to kind of have a kid of our own through her. Kind of a weird proposition, but that's what they land at, and they wind up having a kid. His name's Ishmael. And then fast forward a little bit later, they have Isaac, and Isaac means laughter. If you didn't know that, that's why they named him that, because this is the craziest thing. We have a son, and they named him Isaac. And so fast forward, Abraham has Isaac, Isaac has Jacob, Jacob has 12 sons. Those become the 12 tribes of Israel. And one of those sons, Jacob had many sons, but one of those sons is named Joseph. And Joseph's brothers think that their dad, Jacob, favors Joseph. They perceive that based on their interactions with him, and they decide getting rid of him. And they throw him in a pit. They fake his death. You got to read the Bible. This is crazy stuff. They throw him in a pit, fake his death, And then he finds himself in Egypt, of all places, to go, and he's a laborer there. And people start to see some gifts that he has. He's really gifted by God. And so eventually he's kind of working his way up, and then he gets associated with hooking up with Potiphar's wife, gets thrown in jail for that. But then he starts having dreams. A dream is a prophetic dream. And he begins to share this, and lo and behold, it's a dream about a famine, or he's interpreting dreams, rather. And so next thing you know, he's in front of Pharaoh, interpreting this dream, and boom, he's the prime minister of Egypt, based on his giftedness, based on his interpretation of this dream, because now Egypt is prepared for this famine that's coming. All this is setting up the story of promise. And then, so this famine hits, he sends a text message to his brothers. No, just kidding. His brothers show up because they're in desperate need for food, and lo and behold, there's their brother. And in that moment, he has the power to execute them all. And he responds to them, though they mistreated him, though they acted as if he wasn't even there. He responds with love and grace. It says, what you meant for me, God meant for me. Come in. And we're going to see that that's a picture of God's heart throughout really the entire Bible, toward you and toward me. And so they move in, and they become a people here in Egypt. They start multiplying like rabbits. There are so many Hebrews that the Egyptians are now going, what are we going to do with them? Because they are about to outnumber us. And if we don't do something, they're going to overtake us. So what do? They put them in slavery, right? So they put them in slavery for 400 years. Which that's thinking. 400 years. 400 years. These people's lives. They're enslaved. And they become a nation, but they are a slave nation. And so fast forward throughout 400 years, you can imagine there's all these stories about Father Abraham, right? Father Abraham had many sons. I'm one of them, so are you. And you gather around at dinner, you sit on Grandpappy's knee, you hear all the old stories. And it's like, hey, Grandpappy, hey, we're slaves. Don't know if you've heard. But there's this tension, right? There's this tension between our circumstance and what we're living, and what you're saying is true about us and who we are, and who God is. And I don't know. You got to believe that some of them are really wrestling with that. Like you and I do oftentimes when we don't know what's going on. We don't know what God's plan is. There's all kinds of tension with our present circumstance. And what in the world is God doing about all of this? Because this hurts and it's hard. And so you see that even in the earliest pages of Scripture, that tension. And so 400 years, all of a sudden, Moses shows up. He's the right man, the right position, the right gifts. And though he's messed up and he's like, God, I don't know, he goes with God. And God uses him. He approaches Pharaoh and says, let my people go. Thank you in the back. Yes, let my people go. And he keeps going to Pharaoh over and over again, let my people go. And Pharaoh stubbornly says no. And all of a sudden, nature just totally unleashes on Egypt. I mean, you got locusts, you got frogs, you've got water pollution, death, all of this just, Egypt crumbles in the matter of days on the behalf of these people, God's people. And so eventually Pharaoh says, go. They go, and they're even kind of chased out, the story. They get going, and then Egypt realizes, what have we done with all our labor? And they chase them. They get to the Red Sea, they're cornered, and all of a sudden God parts the Red Sea. Can you imagine? Parting of the Red Sea, they're walking on dry ground, and all their oppressors are swallowed up behind them. God's heart for his people on display. And so they get to the other side. 3 weeks later, Moses goes to Mount Sinai. So that's the context for where we are in Exodus 20. Moses goes up to Mount Sinai, and he's going to receive for the first time a set of laws for them as a people, because now they're independent. Now they're our own people, and there's this guy that's led them out of slavery, out of Egypt. Like, who in the world are we, and what are we doing? And we're just kind of wandering around out here. God is going to establish a relationship with his people, and he's going to set the rules. He's going to give them the law. But it is important to realize where he starts in saying this. So Exodus 20, chapter 1, let's read. God speaks, and he said all these words, referring to the entirety of the law that's coming. He says, I am the Lord, your God. Let's pause there. I am the Lord, your God. Can you imagine? You're in slavery for 400 years. You're wondering where in the world is God. And all of a sudden, he just turns Egypt upside down. Rescues you, fights for you. You're walking out on dry ground. Established. I'm the Lord, your God. Now, that would imply that we are your people. Yep. But we haven't really done anything. We haven't notice God doesn't say, because you prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed, or because you made so many offerings, I've decided to warm up to you guys now. Because I'm the Lord your God. Established. I'm the Lord your God. Let's continue. I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. And so there is this relationship that's established with hey, remember this. Put a flag in the ground. My love for you, my power, my favor toward you has been on display. And I want you to know it and believe it about yourself. And we're about to get into the rules. We're about to get into the rules. But the relationship precedes the rules. In fact, the relationship gives context to the rules. Without that, these mean something entirely different. This is not a contract. This is not a negotiation like, all right, I'm God. I'm going to give you a bunch of rules so that you can please me and make me happy. If you don't do it, lightning bolts. That's not what this is. That's not what this is. This is, I'm the Lord your God, relationship established, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Let's go to the first law given. It's not a thou shalt not. You shall have no other gods before me. No other gods before me. When I put myself in their shoes, if I'm hearing this, I'm kind of thinking, check, you got me, God. Part of the Red Sea, turn Egypt upside down, like, you sold me. I'm in. I'm your right-hand man. I'm called All Faithful. I'm your God. And then it's like, wait. We're about to embark on a journey. We're going to enter out into this wilderness. And when you don't understand, you're going to have to trust me. When you doubt, you're going to have to trust me. When you begin to wonder, can I really trust him? You have to trust him. If you lose someone you love, you got to trust me. Sickness strikes, you got to trust me. The world's hard and it's broken. We're on a road to restoring that. But right here and now, we've got to get one thing straight. You're mine. I'm yours. And I'm with you. No other gods before me. Remember, I'm the Lord your God who's acted on your behalf. He reached into your desperate state, brought you out of slavery, out of darkness, into light. Life with me. Just gotta trust me. We got a long road ahead. And so, bottom line, my kids, my people, period. My kids. So, before God gives the rules, and we're not going to read through the entirety of the Ten Commandments this morning, before God starts to lay that out, he establishes the relationship and reminds them of the relationship. And the entirety of the Ten Commandments, if you look at them, the first four, they're all about life with God. They're all about relationship with Him. The second six, they're all about life together. They're all about life as a people. They're all about living in community, living as one, us and God, us with Him as His people, He with us as our God. And guys, that is the story of the whole Bible. That's the story of the whole Bible. Revelation 21, new heaven, new earth, all things are made right and new. What does God say? I will be with you as your God. You will be with me as my people. I will wipe away every tear from your eyes. Death shall be no more. No more crying, no more tears, no more pain anymore. The old has passed away. the new has come. See the common threads and themes that are going on? It's really wild. And so, if we read ahead in the Old Testament, we keep going with Israel and their journey. Sometimes it's laughable at times. It's even frustrating at times as a reader because they wander so often and wander away from God. And then God disciplines, not to pay them back, but to bring them back. Like a good parent. God doesn't discipline to pay us back. Disciplines to bring us back. And so there's the story time and time again where they wander and they come back, and they wander and they come back. And you're reading it and you're like, how can you be so silly? How can you just not see the bigger picture? And then I start to go, looking at my life, and I go, okay, sorry Israel, sorry I judged you. That's my story. It's where I've been. And so we see over and over again the love of God, like we just sang about. The love of God poured out, relentlessly pursuing his people. It never has been just about establishing a nation. It's not even about the law. It's about relationship. It's about God with his people with God. And so here's what we now know. Number one, relationship precedes the rules. When it comes to God, relationship precedes the rules. Second, God opts for the family model. He could do it different. God opts for the family model with you and with me. Thirdly, the rules are a confirmation, not a condition of relationship with you and me. And those rules hit different when you put them in the context of a God you know, a God who has your best interests in mind, acts on your behalf, one you can trust, even when you don't understand, even when there's oppressors, even when things are closing in on you. It changes the game. When there's a God that you know has your interests in mind, you know that he has made you with a specific design, intent, and purpose for this day and time that only you can accomplish. It changes the game entirely. It's not, it makes me think about marriage. And marriage, if you look at Ephesians 5, it kind of spells out marriage. It's painting a picture of God and us, and marriage is meant to kind of demonstrate that in a sense. And it's covenant. It's a relationship. It's not contract. You don't when you're getting married, you don't sit down with a contract and you're like, all right, here's what I want, here's what you want. We're checking the boxes to make sure that we're both in. And if we don't meet those standards, then we're out. Some people may approach it that way, but that's not healthy love, right? That's selfish entirely. Love looks like you have me. You have all of me. And I have all of you. The good and the bad. The rough times, the pleasant times. We're in this thing together. That's covenant. Family model, how God operates. So, it changes the game when you have a God that you love and you trust. The rules come a little different. And it helps establish how oneness between us and God and us and the church, each other, works. And sometimes it gets messy in relationships in this. But God is on the throne, he's with us, and it's all going somewhere. Which is now what we get to talk about. In Genesis 18, when God made the promise to Abraham, we can sit here and think, what if this is all sweet and great, but what if this whole thing is just about Israel? What if Israel's God's people? We're just kind of over here on an island in America, fast forward however many years later, and this doesn't really apply to us. They're his people. Maybe we can just look at the Ten Commandments and realize this God's for real, and we can try to follow the rules and appease them. But Israel's really got the favor. Check this out. In the same conversation with Abraham, Genesis 18:18, it says, all the nations on the earth will be blessed through you. All the nations on the earth will be blessed through you. So, what does this mean? Let's fast forward. Prophet Isaiah. I will make you as a light for the nations, that my salvation may reach to the end of the earth. So listen up, Israel, from the get-go. Listen up. I love you, and as much as I love you, it's not all about you. This is about establishing a new thing, establishing a new relationship between God and man, and you are going to be a light post. You're going to be a light that shines in the darkness. You are a lighthouse out there, showing the world who I am and my love for you. And as the law came in, and they wondered and they came back, and they wondered and they came back, and there's the whole sacrificial system that God sets up. It's all setting the stage for the promise to be fulfilled. That promise is Jesus Christ. Setting the stage for the one to come. So it shouldn't surprise us when we look back at the story, the 400 years on Moses shows up on the scene, and everything goes crazy. God rescues his people and wander out in the wilderness. It shouldn't surprise us that 1,500 years later, Jesus comes on the scene. The rescuer, the Messiah, the Redeemer, fighting off the oppressors, but much more than that. Rescuing us from sin and darkness. As the law has spelled out, we wander and come back and wander and come back. In comes Jesus. And here's the promise. If we look at John 1:12. That to all who did receive him, who believed in his name, he gave them the right, and pause there, because that is a strong right. When we get to talk about rights, there's a lot of times a lot beneath that. So that's a word that can carry a lot of weight. It's legal language. But God says that you and I have the right to become children of God. How? Trusting. I'm trusting this chair. Believing. Just like Israel coming out of slavery. Hey, you don't know what's coming. This is going to be a wild road. Trust me. Trust me. I'm your God who brought you out of Egypt. Don't forget it. Trust me. God's saying, I am your God who entered in, put skin on, and became your sin. And rose to new life in a way that you couldn't, because you and I were dead in our sins. He's perfect, and he raised us to new life, dead to sin and alive to God, that we might have new life with God, established as sons and daughters. That's what this whole thing is about. Established as sons and daughters. It's all about the relationship. God opts for the family model with you and with me. And rules with God that always precedes the relationship. He says, anything that I require of you, anything that I ask of you, it's evidence of my love for you. Anything that I ask or require, you've got to trust me, because I'm after oneness with you, relationship with you and people, and there is a land that we're moving toward where all things will be made right and new. And I'm going to be with you as your God, and you're going to be with me as my people, and you're just going to have to trust me. Anything I require of you is a demonstration of my love for you. So as you go home, I have a question that we're going to throw up on the screen, and you can talk about it when you're driving in the car. You can take it to your community group home group this week with whoever you're talking with that's been here, and ask this question. Growing up, did you feel that a relationship with God was based on the family model, the club model, or the neighborhood association model? Touch up every time when I read that. But which one? I'm not talking about like what you like Sunday school answer thought up here. I'm talking about what you felt, what you lived, what you really kind of thought, or wondered as you waded into that tension of how the rules, the relationship with God, and how it works, how it all goes together. But don't forget, God opts for the family model. Relationship precedes the rules. Anything God asks of you, it's evidence of his love for you. Let's pray. God, we're so thankful. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for pursuing us. Even when we wondered, stepped away, doubts, I haven't always trusted you. Pray all that would lead us more deeply into your arms. Pray, God, that we would run in the freedom of your love and life with you. And that we wouldn't mistreat your love, that we wouldn't turn around and go, well, okay, I got a get out of jail free card, I can do what I want. That's abuse, that's not love. But that we would fully embrace, enter into life with you as you have made possible, ultimately through your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you that you opt for the family model. We're so glad. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, I pray. Amen. Hey, thank you guys for being here. Next week, Jeremy Powell, folks. If it's your first time, come back, because he's the man. And we're so blessed to have him here at Crosswind. Thank you all, and we'll see you next week.